Good evening. I apologize that tonight's class was not recorded, and so we're not able to share the recording from the class on First Corinthians. But for those of you who were not able to attend the class, thank you for joining. And I want to just give an overview of some of the things we talked about in class tonight, so that you're caught up with kind of the background of the Church of Corinth. And so we're looking at First Corinthians tonight. And Corinth was a city in Greece. It had a population somewhere between 100,000 to 600,000, maybe more, maybe less. We don't know the exact population of Corinth, but it was a diverse city. There were people from all over that were a part of this city. And Leon Morris described the city of Corinth as intellectually alert, materially prosperous, and morally corrupt. And that's because Corinth was a port city. And you'll see, I will put in the description a link to a video that'll show you some of the geography of Corinth that'll help describe this. But what was happening was it was dangerous to go further south with the ships, because at this point in time, people were going and just hugging the coast wherever they were traveling by boat. And so coming through Corinth, they ended up going down and then coming, and there was this 4-mile long strip of land where people would unload their boats, take the supplies across, reload them to get the boats and the supplies from east to west. And Corinth was right at that neck, that spot where these goods were traveling through. So you had a lot of people who were just traveling through, just passing by. And with a port city, you had all the pros and cons of being in a port city. You had prostitution, you had drunkenness, you had immorality, you had lots of commerce. You also had the opportunity to have a movement spread really far and wide from Corinth, because you had a lot of people coming through and then taking what they had learned and then being able to move that larger distances because of the amount of travel coming through Corinth. It was also a large city. And so in Corinth, Paul was able to reach a number of more people. We know Paul spent at least 2 trips that he went to Corinth, and he spent a significant amount of time in Corinth and wrote. We have 2 letters in the Bible, 1st and 2nd Corinthians. We know Paul probably wrote more letters than just those 2 to the people of Corinth. Some history about Corinth is that there was the Greek, older ancient city of Corinth, and then we had Roman Corinth. When we're talking about the Corinth that Paul was a part of, that's the Roman Corinth. But in Corinth existed as a city for many years. It's an ancient city, but in 164 BC, Corinth joined some other city-states to rebel against Rome. And in doing so, Corinth was completely destroyed and burned to the ground. All of the men of Corinth were killed. The women and children of Corinth were taken as slaves and spread out. And so there were not any more Corinthians as far as living in this area after 164 BC. And Corinth, this area, remained in ruins from 146 until 44 BC. It was in 44 BC, shortly before Julius Caesar's assassination, that he declared that the city of Corinth be rebuilt because of its location, that it was an excellent place for trade to go through. Julius Caesar probably never saw Corinth rebuilt, but the city was rebuilt, and it was rebuilt as a colony of Rome. And so it became almost a mini Rome. It would have Roman freemen and citizens that moved to Corinth. You had Roman architecture, you had Roman influence. You would see writing in Latin on signs instead of in Greek, despite its location right here in Greece, but you would see so much Roman influence. And so at first was being settled by Romans, but then over time, Greeks started to move back into Corinth as well. And so you had this diversity of Romans, Greeks, and people from all over. You also had some economic divides that were occurring. So when Corinth was being rebuilt, people might have moved there and got rich quick because they started a business and their business might have been able to thrive. But then you also had slaves that would come in as well. And so you had these major class distinctions in Corinth. You had the very rich and you had the very poor, both of whom would have been a part of the church in Corinth, although the church in Corinth was most likely made up mostly of those who were of lower social status. Another thing that we have going on in Corinth is that we have some refugees in Corinth at this time. So Jews were expelled from Rome in 19 AD under Tiberius. And the reason why they were expelled, we don't know. One of the theories is that there was a large contribution from a Roman woman that never made it to the temple in Jerusalem, and Jews were being expelled because of fraud from Rome. We don't actually know why it was, but we also know that in 49 AD under Claudius, Jews were expelled again from Rome because of the disturbances that were being caused in response to the rise of Christianity. And some of those Jews that were expelled from Rome ended up moving to Corinth, or being sent to Corinth. And so there is a Jewish community in Corinth as well. It was in 54 AD that Jews were allowed to return to Rome, but you still had, even later, after the letters that we read to the Corinthians, there's evidence of a Jewish synagogue, archaeological evidence in Corinth. And so though we know that there were Jewish communities in Corinth, and we see that in Paul's writings, that there are divisions between the Gentiles and between the Jews within this church of Corinth. And so that's a little bit about the history of Corinth. And there are two links beneath this video. One is the geography of Corinth, which I'd invite you to watch. And then also the Bible Project's outline of the First Corinthians that'll walk you through some of the major themes that are present within this first letter to the people of Corinth. I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for joining in and being a part of our ongoing Bible study. And we'll meet again next week. We'll be going over the second letter of Paul to the Corinthians. Have a great week.